I teach at Columbia College in Chicago, and I had taken the job, and I had a student that had reached out to me after the semester had closed, and he said, what are you up to? Where are you at? And I was already living here, and I said, well, I actually took a job in New Hampshire, and I'll never forget it. He said, New Hampshire, that's random as fuck. And I was like, in fact, it is random as fuck.
Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Trey Farkas, and on today's episode, how Prescott Park plans to celebrate its 50th birthday this summer, and a glimpse into the back-breaking work it takes to hold a free outdoor series that attracts over 150,000 patrons each season. Every summer, crowds of people from across America descend upon the Seacoast to take in the region's buzzing cultural scene. From live acts at the historic music hall, to classical theater at the Ogunquit Playhouse, to that guy who plays the bagpipes in Market Square, there's something for everyone here on the Seacoast. But there is one venue that trumps all, and that's Prescott Park, the quintessentially New England green space seated majestically along the Piscataqua River. The price tag for a show with a waterfront view on a perfect summer evening? A bargain deal if you ask me. It's free. Every Wednesday from now through August 14th, the park will hold free concerts from diverse acts like Alan Stone, Patty Griffin, Brittany Spencer, and many more. Additionally, from June 21st to August 11th, the hit musical Legally Blonde takes the Wilcox main stage from Thursdays through Sundays. Now, how does this magical summer come together? And how, with only a $2 million annual budget, does Portsmouth afford to pay the park staff, its performers, the behind-the-scenes crew, and all of the other hidden costs associated without charging for tickets? We'll find out those answers on today's episode, but first, the Seacoast story of Courtney Perkins, the park's executive director, who left the big city of Chicago behind to come work in the, quote, random as fuck state of New Hampshire in 2020.
I started looking for sort of the next special job in December of 2019. So I didn't realize what was ahead of all of us at that point. And my husband and I were looking to get out of Chicago. In particular, my husband. I love Chicago deeply. It's always home for me. For him, a little less so. I thought we would end up in the Pacific Northwest because that's where I have a ton of family, Portland and Seattle area. And as I was looking at all of the national searches for different arts organizations, this one at the festival stuck out to me because of its accessibility mission, right? So the festival is recommended donation. And I kept looking at it saying, like, how does this arts organization survive? They're putting on national touring acts and a full-scale musical, and they don't actually charge for tickets. So for many arts organizations, I would say most across the country, ticket revenue is critical revenue to keeping us alive. And so that initially drew me in, just like, how does it work? And then as I got to know the organization even more deeply, getting to meet the board and meet the current staff, I realized that it is actually, they fully believe and embrace the mission. They really want to create a home for everybody in the arts, whether you have the capacity to afford it or not. The festival puts excellent quality art on stage for everybody. So it sold me. We drove here in the third week of the shutdown, and it was like a ghost town. There was no one outside. And my husband said, I know I said I wanted to move to a smaller town, but Jesus, it's so quiet here. I don't know if I can do it. And I was like, I have a sense that it's not always like this. The board connected me with a real estate agent, George Carlisle, who was what I call the unofficial ambassador for Portsmouth. And he talked us through it and was like, it's never like this. Oh my, and just told us all the sort of secrets and special aspects to the Portsmouth, the festival, and the Seacoast in general. And, we made the decision. When I think back on it, I don't actually remember the moment when I knew with full clarity that we were coming here. So I've kind of blacked that out, I think. And in 6 weeks from the decision, we were here, in the middle of the pandemic, knew no one here. And we pulled up in our U-Haul and Apparently there was a newspaper article released the week before, and my neighbors came out and they were like, "We know all about you. Where's Scout and Atticus?" That are my two dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was very,
Tell me you're an arch person without saying you're an arch person.
Right. So it was very like, oh, okay. So we felt welcome immediately. And, I jumped right in. I was already working remotely for 2 weeks from Chicago before I started in person. And we had made the decision to cancel the season. So it was like all hands on deck, let's fundraise so the festival can survive the pandemic. So yeah, it's a crazy story, but I worked at a really special organization for 13 years and I wanted the next job to be really special. And so I wasn't just looking for any job. I was looking for the job, and I don't regret it.
And we'll get to the early days of COVID and the early days of your job in a moment. But had you ever given any thought to the Seacoast beforehand? What was your perception of this area, New Hampshire, Southern Maine, before you came here?
So I'd never been to New Hampshire before. So I didn't know anything about it. I teach at Columbia College in Chicago, and I had taken the job, and I had a student that had reached out to me after the semester had closed, and he said, "What are you up to? Where are you at?" And I was already living here. And I said, "Well, I actually took a job in New Hampshire." And I'll never forget it. He said, "New Hampshire, that's random as fuck." And I was like, in fact, it is random as fuck. And now that we live here, you discover all of these incredible things like the proximity to the water and the mountains, and the sheer amount of arts and culture in a town this small is, again, another really rare thing. Now it's something that I want to keep secret. Like my friends from Chicago will come visit and they'll be like, why don't more people know about this place? It's amazing. So yeah, we feel really lucky to have landed here, but I didn't know that, to be honest, I didn't know that there were parts of New Hampshire on the water. Like we just don't know about it, right? So yeah, much more knowledge now than I had then.
Now, during the early days of COVID, I mean, the arts were across the country just shattered because you're relying on ticket sales.
Yes.
Now, here, a little bit different because that's not the model at Prescott Park. Mm-hmm. So I imagine community support actually became a big strength during those early days of COVID when Prescott Park just couldn't put on anything. So when you were just completely thrown into the fire here, starting a new job is difficult, but starting a new job in the arts during the pandemic is triply difficult. Yeah. What were those early days like for you, and how'd you get through it?
Well, I think that the festival, prior to me coming here, the director of development, Lee Frank, who was one of the sort of the lone surviving employee as of October of 2019, his philosophy on fundraising is relationship based, which is exactly how I think about fundraising. You never want it to be transactional. You want people to write the organization and the people a check rather than just writing a check for the sake of writing it. So the festival had begun building those kind of really important relationships before I started. And I came in and it was, let me meet as many people, even if it's over Zoom, let me meet as many people as I can just to talk to them, get their festival experience, their Portsmouth story, similar to what you're doing. Part of what I wanted to do was learn about what makes this place tick, why people do what they do, why people support the festival at the level that they do. And, we just moved relationships forward. And in times of challenge like the pandemic, when you fundraise with relationships at the root of it, it's not easy, but you have a much more fluid time about having challenging conversations with your donors. Like, would you still consider supporting the festival with a sponsorship, even though we're not doing any of the activities that you sponsored? I remember Wentworth Douglas, who sponsors our movie series, they still supported us regardless. And many of our sponsors did just because they wanted the festival to survive. And certainly a lot of the major donors came forward and they were like, there are critical organizations in this area that cannot fail. And so we're going to put our money where our mouth is and make sure that you get through it. We did some things, like we translated into a kind of a roving movie theater because we have a blow up movie screen, but none of which gets you the sort of suggested donation revenue that you would need to survive a typical season.
Now, I would think, like you said, this is such a unique business model that is not the main thing around the country. I imagine a lot of people would kind of run away from that. Oh, just community supported? That sounds like a sinking ship. I can't go take that job. Yep. So why did you want to have that?
A lot of people are scared of fundraising. I believe in fundraising if you believe in, the work that you're doing. So I've never shied away from fundraising. The way that I look at it is I'm working at this amazing place and I'm presenting an opportunity to someone with capacity to give, to invest their money in a way that makes them feel really good, whether it's seeing their logo, on our website, on the stage, or knowing that they underwrote families that couldn't otherwise afford to be here, even to make the donation, or underwrote the musical, the camp, whatever it is. My job is to share this amazing organization with people that have the capacity to give and really want to do something interesting and impactful with their money. We usher through probably 150,000 people in the summertime over the course of 10 weeks. We have a camp program, movies, musical, concerts. There's a little bit of everything for everyone, and a good fundraiser, because they are building relationships, begins to learn what their donors care about and can say, oh, I got this new opportunity. We're expanding the education programs. I know you love making sure kids have access to the arts. Would you be interested in funding this expansion? Right. So I'm never shied away from fundraising. And I knew that's why I said looking for the next special thing, right? Like I always want to feel like I thoroughly believe in the organization that I work for. And it was really easy with the festival. So during the pandemic, it made sort of selling the idea of the festival, selling the idea of what the festival would be if the pandemic wasn't happening. It made that a little easier.
Let's talk about Prescott Park specifically.
Yes.
This summer, the 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary.
Absolutely incredible. I know you've only been here 40 years. You have not lived and breathed Prescott Park your entire life like many of the Seacoast members here have. But what can you tell us about 1974 when this whole thing started, or just the early days of Prescott Park?
So I've done a lot of preparing for the 50th anniversary, has been a lot of mining the history of the festival and talking to the people that were the original ideators of the festival. And I had an amazing conversation with Bob Thorson that worked with the city. He was a city planner for many years back in the 70s. And there was a small group of people, of youngsters, 28, 27, part of the city that were really looking to make change. They all appreciated and loved arts and culture. They understood that tied to the vibrancy of a community and really began to kind of push those ideas out, right? And a woman by the name of Grace Casey was doing visual arts classes in the park under a tent, working with kids to find their voice in the arts. And Paul McEachern, the current mayor's dad, who was mayor back then, encouraged who would eventually be the founding executive director, John Kimball. He was like, hey, you should go over. He worked with Theater by the Sea. You should go over and work with Grace Casey in Prescott Park. There's something special there. Let's do something with the stage. Let's put something in the park. It's a beautiful space for the community. And 2 years later, the festival had its first performance, Peter and the Wolf. And then the next year, it had its first musical on the stage, Carousel. And John Kimball was with the festival for, I think, 9 years after that, and really grew it into the original DNA, which was movies, musical theater, visual arts, and concerts, which is very similar to what it is today. I spoke with John Kimball as well, and I asked him, I said, did you know straight away that there was magic here? Or did it take a little time to calibrate and figure that out? And he said, after the first performance, they knew that there was something magical, just being next to the water and bringing the community together in the space. They knew right away and just realized, okay, we have to keep doing this. We have to keep figuring out ways to do this. And amazingly, we're still doing very much the same things 50 years later. And there have been literally thousands of people that have facilitated the festival over those years. Some of our years were failing financially and people came in and bailed us out. And other people came in and grew the festival in exponential ways on the concert series side. So it's really kind of taken an incredible journey, but the root idea is still very much here and at the heart of the festival. So it was a good idea from the very beginning. Those sort of original visionaries back in the 70s had a great idea, and we've just, each one of us as ambassadors over time have helped to move it forward.
And has the model always been for the festival to be supported by the community members?
Yep, it's always been a suggested donation model. So the Prescott sisters donated the park to the city for public use. Within the deed, there is specific language that the park has to remain free and accessible at all times to the public. So blocking off any area of the park and restricting access because you're charging a ticket price was not something within the deed that the city felt like they could do, that the organization should do. So part of the way that they incorporated that is it's suggested donation. So if you want to walk through and you're not here for the show and you just want to take in the park, you can absolutely do that. If you want to come through and support the festival, you can make that donation or more if you'd like. And if you want to come through and make no donation, you're absolutely welcome regardless.
What are all the various ways that people can support? Obviously, for all the shows, we see the
gates,
the gates, yes, with
yes.
the suggested donation.
Yep.
But there are many more ways that people can participate. So how can we do that?
You can pre-reserve or pre-make your donation online. You can become a season pass holder. And there are varying levels from an individual membership all the way up to some of our highest levels called our all access pass and our VIP access, where you are paying a premium, but you get access to reservations, to hearing about the shows, access to the artists before anyone else does. And built within that is the sort of prepayment idea of your suggested donation. You get free access to Chowder Fest, etc. And there's also at the higher levels, there's charitable support built into that as well.
But there's a bunch of local companies and brands in the community that also contribute as well.
Our corporate sponsorship is our single largest contributed revenue line in all of the ways that we raise money for the festival. It is our lifeblood for doing what we do. If this community was not as generous as it was, we wouldn't exist. And that is literally corporations signing up for sponsorships, starting at $3,000 all the way up to $25,000 and $50,000, wow, to people buying ads, from a quarter page ad to, a full page color ad or a cover. All of that sort of feeds into our ability to do what we do. The festival's budget is just under $2 million to put this on every year.
Wow.
We don't get any money from the city of Portsmouth. We actually pay them for use of the park.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So there is this sense that we are a city organization, and we are not. We're an independent organization. City is a great partner of ours, but we pay to be in the park. We pay to have the bathrooms cleaned. We pay a significant amount of money to be here. Where in many communities across the country, if there's an organization like ours, municipalities are paying for them to do what they do. In Chicago, as an example, the city of Chicago pays a nonprofit organization to program Millennium Park. This is not that way. So we fight a little bit of this lack of understanding from the general public that we're not a city-run organization.
When we return, how Courtney convinces the acts to come here, how much she pays them, and why she prays to the Seacoast gods every Wednesday morning. Stay with us. This is Seacoast Stories. Hey everyone, it's Troy. I want to take a quick moment to tell you about my Seacoast story. I moved here last summer on a whim. My day job at Spotify allows me to live wherever I want, and so I chose the Seacoast. It was going okay for a while, but in November 2023, I tore up my lease, arranged to move out of my Portsmouth apartment in January, and vowed to move somewhere else, to a better city, better state, a better country that would offer me the life that I was looking for. But then, that same week, something happened. I had a medical scare during a class at Three Bridges Yoga, and the studio's owner, Stephanie Polini, stopped her demo to help me get through it. An hour later, she sent an email to check in on me. The next week, a similar thing played out at my gym, Seacoast Kettlebell. It was then and there that I realized that the very thing I'd wanted for years, community, feeling like I belonged somewhere, was right here on the Seacoast. I just needed to do a better job of looking for it. And so I decided to stay and to give it another chance. And since that moment, the treasures of the Seacoast keep revealing themselves to me. And I've learned that there is a deep sense of community here, and there's a deep desire to connect with each other, to support local, and to hear each other's stories. That's why I started this podcast. And that's why I'm obsessed with telling you the stories behind some of your favorite Seacoast people. To bring high-quality podcasts to you every week, I just need one very small favor from you. Hit the follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. That is the number one way you can support this show right now. That is it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Now let's get back to today's episode. Let's talk about the upcoming season and what to expect. So how do you get the acts to come here? Who makes that decision? When does the vetting process start? Who reaches out to who? All the things. I'm curious.
So what is unique and interesting about the festival, and a big reason why I wanted to come to this organization as the executive director here, is the chief curator of all of the artistic work. It doesn't always happen that way in arts organizations. Sometimes it's split between an executive director and an artistic director. Here, it's the same thing. So I am negotiating and booking all of the bands. The final decision on which musical we do is my final decision, and the movies, the whole bit. So it is a constant process, right? I listen to music constantly. I take recommendations from our fans, our audiences, from staff members, board members. I keep a running list. I go to festivals to make sure that I'm hearing what's up and coming and the new voices in the different spaces that we like to program. And it puts me in a position to constantly consume art, which I would do anyway, which is great. And this is where my legal background comes in, right? So I negotiate all of the contracts as well with the national touring acts, with the artists, with the actors, and then make pitches once I've secured the national touring acts, make pitches for local bands to support those national touring acts. So what some people don't know is it's not entirely up to the festival who opens for these national touring acts. So I have to actually advocate for local bands and kind of talk to the agents, talk to the management and say, this is why I think they're a good fit. This is the sound, the look, the whole bit, the experience. And it's not something the festival has always done because it's difficult and it's time consuming. But I think the payoff is we get to highlight the talent that's in this community. Part of why we have so much talent here is because there's so much arts and culture. So you grow up seeing things on stage and you can imagine yourself on stage. So there are so many, again, for a small concentration of people, there are so many bands, so many incredible acts that we can partner with and put on the main stage. So it's a really fun thing that I get to do, and a very much a privilege.
So when you're deciding who you want to bring here this summer, what's the checklist? What's the ideal act for Prescott Park?
We have a lot of people to satisfy because our audience is multi-generational. We put on different genres of music. So approaching an anniversary year, I always think about highlighting what we've done in the past, friends that have helped us become what we are, inviting them back, and then elevating new and important voices. We always like to think about making sure that there are as many women on the stage as there are men, highlighting marginalized voices where we can. So I look at all different characteristics, genres, et cetera, and try to really maintain a nice balance. Not too much bluegrass, not too much rock, not too much singer-songwriter, not too many men. And I think this year we landed with a really good mix of acts. I'm really excited at what we're looking at. We have some old friends like Natalie McMaster and Danelle Leahy, Patty Griffin, and then some new voices like Joy Aladakun and Brittany Spencer, Josiah and the Bonnevilles, that are kind of coming up at different heights in country, in Americana, in folk. And I think we're really lucky. We can't afford as much as everyone else can because we don't have ticket sales. So I use my negotiating skills as much as I can to get the bands for what the festival can afford. The other interesting side note is when we book, we take on an incredible amount of risk because we are outdoors. We do not have a covered stage. So if we get rained out, we have to pay the bands anyway. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So the festival takes on a great deal of programming risk especially when you have a summer like last year, right?
Oh yeah.
Thankfully, and this is where your relationships pay off. So thankfully, we've developed a relationship with the music hall for what we call a rain or shine series. So last year we reserved 6 concerts to move to the music hall if they needed to because of weather. We used it 4 times last year. And I try to do that with the most expensive shows because it gives us some insurance. We can't make as much money at the music hall because it limits our capacity. The festival can have thousands of people. Music hall caps at 855, but it gives us the opportunity to still have the show, still have the artists be able to perform and have our audience enjoy it. So there are just so many things to think about. So many agents that come to me and say, hey, so-and-so is coming through. Can you book them on stage? And it's a $50,000 or $60,000 price tag. And that just for the festival is an incredible risk, one that we can't really afford to do without a covered stage.
Can I ask what the average price tag is?
For me, for my comfort level, I don't typically go over 25,000 at the festival. And when I do, it's for a really special show. I would say average price tag, for some of our up and coming voices, we're looking at $500 to $7,500. And we go up to 25. We had one pop at 30 since I've been here. We used to do more than that historically, but we lost a couple of those shows to weather. So you learn and grow and change and tweak and pivot as you know more. So.
Well, I imagine you all here at Prescott Park are praying to the gods every Wednesday morning, to the Seacoast gods, that everything works out okay.
Oh, I pray and sacrifice all the things to the weather gods. It's hard because we love the environment, but we love a drought season for the summer. That is a great summer for us. But we also love New Hampshire, right? So you don't get the green and the beauty without the rain. So it's a double-edged sword. But yes, all of us are unofficial meteorologists, and we have all the apps, every single one of them. And it is the thing that haunts all of us every day for the 10 weeks of the season. Truly, I hate it the most.
When you speak to the acts after they've performed, what is the reaction that you get from them?
Some people come in and they don't know that they're going to perform on a musical set, right? And they come in and they're like, what the hell is this? Or like, what is this place? So they're a little unsure initially. And then they experience the magic of the audience and being outside, looking at the bridge, taking it all in, and learning that a lot of what I do when I meet the band is I tell them the story of the festival and why it's important, that it's recommended donation, that everybody has a home here regardless. There is a conversion that happens with people when they perform, and I will often afterwards go and talk to bands and they were like, I get it. This is an amazing place. And many times they will remark from stage, like, do you know how special this place is? It's so beautiful, but also like it's so special that it's recommended donation. So as an example, my first season that we actually had a concert series, I booked Amos Lee. He was doing a brewery tour. We technically couldn't have typically afforded him because he would have been a little too expensive for us. But because the breweries were paying him well, I kind of snuck a show in there. And he came in and performed on the Charlie Brown set and was like, what is this weirdo place? And I talked to him a little bit before, but then after, he was just effusive about how special the festival was, how cool the model is, that he has never seen anything like it, didn't expect the audience to be as responsive as they were, and he just had a great time. And we see so much of that, and that I think is how we build relationships with artists to come back year after year when we definitely can no longer afford them. Like the Warren Treaty has been everywhere this year. We definitely should not afford them, but they love playing the festival stage. So they're coming back to celebrate our birthday.
Is there a high retention rate or desire to come back?
Well, you better believe that after every concert, I go back and talk to the artists and be like, we can't wait to have you back. And, you know, when I have their commitment, I talked to Alan Stone's agent this year, and he has a new agent, and I work with him on a number of other bands. And I said, hey, I'd like to get Alan Stone back. And he was like, you can't afford Alan. And I said, well, you know, I talked to Alan. He's played here the last 2 years in a row, and he found out it was our 50th next year, and he really wanted to be a part of it. So would you just ask him? And he was like, yeah, I guess. Called me back in 15 minutes. He was like, all right, let's get a date on the books. He wants to do it. So I think it's definitely when you build it from a relationship standpoint, when you treat the artist well backstage, you know that the audience is going to respond to them, that our audience is really special and embrace artists in a unique way. So you know they're going to have a good time once they get on stage. But if you handle them respectfully and generously backstage, it's a memorable experience. So they have a great time during the day as they're prepping for the show, because they're under the tent. They're next to the Piscataqua. They walk around Portsmouth. It's so cute. They have lunch. They love it. So it's very memorable for them. Many of them bring their families, and the kids play in the park during the day. I remember the first time Lone Bellow played here, Zach and his son played football right outside on the grass. They had a little pickup baseball game. So it's a beautiful space, and when handled right, it creates one of those memorable experiences for artists that they're happy to return to.
Well, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
And it's so heartwarming to hear that the art church is supported in this way. You referenced Lone Bellow. They just performed on Friday to kick off the musical series for the summer. Also happening this summer, the musical. It's Legally Blonde.
It is.
Which you have selected. Legally Blonde, very popular movie, musical. Why is that the selection this year?
Legally Blonde is a romp, right? It is high energy, a real dancey show, a big cast. It's funny, even though it's set in the early aughts. It is, when you have somebody doing a commencement speech where they tell women that their greatest achievement will be in the home, you can never really stop elevating women's voices and marginalized voices. There isn't enough opportunity to do that. And this is a show about being comfortable with who you are, but also it empowers females. It really puts that out there. And I think the cast is an incredible mix. So I'm so excited. And I think maybe Legally Blonde is a weird choice. That's not a golden age musical choice for the 50th anniversary, but it's high energy, it's fun, and it's forward looking. And I think that's what we are going for with Legally Blonde. And I think the audiences will love it. The set is like insanely larger than life. So there's a lot of spectacle to it, but it'll be a great show.
Now, the cast.
Yes.
Who is the cast? I'm sad to admit I've never seen a show in here, because it's my second. I didn't go last summer. That was my first summer here, so I don't really know anything about who is in it. Are these high schoolers? Are these professionals? Who comprises the cast?
It's a mix. We don't have any high schoolers this season, but we have many seasons previous to this. We do a national audition. This year we got 587 submissions. We watch every single one of them. We narrowed it down to a second slate of 200 and then a final callback of maybe 50. And they're from all over. What we landed with is an amazing mix of people from the Seacoast, many of which are college students or have graduated from colleges outside of the Seacoast and then come back home, musical theater majors, and then some people out of New York, out of Boston that are actively performing in Boston and New York. So it's a unique mix, and they are incredibly talented. Again, the Seacoast is filled with a lot of talent, certainly where musical theater is concerned, but we augment and support diversity from, all over the country. And yeah, it's a super talented cast.
So what exactly is the audition process like? They send you your tapes, you all watch them, then what happens from there?
Then we narrow down the list. So they can submit, in the first round, they can submit any song that they want and read from any side that they want. Second round, we tell them specifically what we want them to sing. And then the third and final round is when we narrow down them into specific roles, where we have just a handful of people in specific roles and we ask them to do something very specific for that role. It's all done virtually. We find that gives us the widest net to cast. And then we begin negotiating. So we narrow down our top choices. And oftentimes you don't get your top choice because they have already been selected by another theater that's doing it sooner than you. This year we had a lot of luck with our offers and didn't really have to go back to the drawing board on many of the roles because so many people are, one, excited about being on the festival stage, and two, really excited about Legally Blonde.
The ones that are outsiders that you bring in from New York City or Boston area, do they stay in the Seacoast for the summer?
This is the ever vexing problem of really wanting diverse voices on the stage. we pay for housing.
Wow.
This year we have a relationship with UNH for discounted dorm housing. But it is, I use the word discounted lightly, no ding against UNH, just how expensive it is to be in the Seacoast area. And then we have one generous family that they used to sing on the stage at the festival, and they have a studio over their garage that they rent during the year to a UNH student. And they gave us an incredible deal to have one actor stay there. We have a couple actors staying with families. So we do a combination of things, but it is a hefty price tag that the board is really, last year when we did, as an example, when we did Little Shop of Horrors, it is required by the script to cast 3 African-American women in the role of the Ronettes. And you are challenged in the Seacoast area to find 3 equally talented African-American female voices for that role. So we cast a national net for that and brought in 3 women, and it was not something we had budgeted for, just kind of an oversight. And it cost us $14,000 to house them for the summer. But again, to the board's credit, they said, if this is what it needs to be, we want the diversity on stage, this is where our investment needs to go. So yeah, I think it's a unique challenge, as housing, parking, all of the things are challenging here, but we make it work.
And if a family wants to take in an actor or actress for the summer, what's the process like for that?
Literally grab any of us, call any of us, email the festival. We have, like I said, a handful of families that are generously doing that this summer. And the ones that do it really enjoy it because it's a way to participate and be part of the extended festival family. So if anyone is interested in doing that, we are always looking for support in that way.
So you guys put up the actors and actresses for the summer. Are they paid as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Every actor is paid.
All paid equally, or does it vary on the role?
It typically varies on the role, and for those actors that pick up understudy roles, there's additional support for that. We have some actors that, for the ones that are coming in from out of town, some actors that are carpooling, so we'll add a little bit of travel support for the ones that are driving 3 or 4 different actors to the festival every day. But yes, they're all paid positions.
There is so much that goes into this process that most people don't even realize or think about. When you're just getting lost in the minutia of all of this, I'm sure it's stressful. I'm sure you lose sleep. The weather brings a whole added element to this as well. When you have those moments where you're really, really stressed, what do you come back to that keeps you going?
We talked a little bit about my personal and sort of circuitous journey to the arts. Many of my colleagues, when I went to grad school, don't actually work in the arts. They couldn't find a paying job that could support them in the arts. So they're doing different wonderful things, but not in the arts. I feel from the get-go incredibly lucky to be able to work actively in the arts. And that gets you so far, right? That gets you in the door and, dealing with certain challenges. When things get really tough, I sit at every show in the back on the VIP deck and I watch what happens, the conversion that happens from somebody that's never seen a show before or never seen the band that I picked to go on stage. I watch this conversion that happens where they're like, I'm not sure about if I'm going to enjoy this, to, oh my God, this is amazing, right? There are special moments that happen when you work in the arts that remind you of how lucky you are to do this work. And those moments for some of the people or many of the people in the audience can be, again, it plants the seed for a lifelong love of the arts. And we're so lucky to be able to do that. It can blossom into so many different things. And I just think that we all work really hard year-round, the year-round team, because we all appreciate that we get to do that. We all see those special moments and experience them. Experience the really tough moments too, certainly. But the payoff on the positive side is so much bigger and better, and has so many legs to it. Because again, when you can be someone's first experience of seeing something they don't even understand, a toddler that doesn't even necessarily understand the words that they're hearing, but the beats move through them. And it's the sense memory that creates something that can just kind of proliferate throughout their life. Like, that's an incredible thing to be part of. So I always think about that. And I think about that I could be a lawyer and be hating my life every day. No offense to lawyers that love their work, but for me, it wasn't it. So I think for me, gratitude helps to overcome a lot of the stress. Now, you will find me on my worst day saying like gratitude schmatitude, like I want to tear my hair out. But most of the time, you can find something somewhere.
Courtney, I've got one final question for you. We're going to be asking this question to every person who appears on Seacoast Stories as the final question. And it's simply this. Courtney, what is your mission?
My mission, as it has always been as a mentor, as a teacher, is to use arts as a pathway for others to elevate their voices. It's what gives me joy. So that is from, a student perspective, again, finding your voice, to a professional artist being able to share their stories on the stage. Fundraising, relationship building is how I create opportunities for people to do that. It's been a lifelong mission of mine to elevate voices that aren't otherwise heard in those spaces. And I did it in Chicago for many years, and I'm happy to carry that torch to Portsmouth and have all of these opportunities over the course of the summer to do that.
And that's Courtney Perkins wrapping up the very first episode of Seacoast Stories. The Prescott Park Arts Festival is officially underway, and you can buy your tickets for Legally Blonde and more musical performances at Ticketmaster.com/ Oh, just kidding. It's free, but $10 donations are encouraged at the entrance. Now, before I left Courtney's office, I had to ask her one final question. I grew up in the arts. I sang opera at a high school in upstate New York with a very prestigious music program. I was in a few musicals in college, and the performing arts just mean a lot to me. And they remain a large part of who I am and what makes me happy. When I'm on a stage, all of my favorite parts of me begin to come out. I'm nervous, sure, but feels right. I feel at home. Unfortunately, more and more of today's children are growing up without having the joys that I once did. When school budgets have to get cut, which they often do, the arts programs are usually the first thing to go. A 2021 survey by Americans for the Arts found that 35% of arts organizations reported a decrease in their education budget from the previous year. And that's just for the schools that offer the arts. Minority students in low-income areas often aren't given the opportunities to learn any art, music, or dance. And that makes me really sad, because I believe learning about the performing arts is just as critical to a child's education as biology and history are, if not more. So I asked Courtney about this troubling trend, and this is what she had to say.
There are tons of studies that correlate the arts to success in math and reading. So if you don't care about the arts from the beauty of it, then I think you can tie a kid learning about the arts, participating in the arts, to their success in math and English. So I don't have to discuss the data points there, but I think that kids find their voices through the arts, right? Whether it's on stage or it's backstage, or there is the opportunity for your child, someone else's child, to really find their own path, see something mirrored on stage that they couldn't have imagined for themselves. I worked with an incredible music director at Chicago Sinfonietta, Maestro Paul Freeman, who was the first African-American conductor on over 50 podiums around the world. So he was a trailblazer. He always said, you can't be it if you can't see it, right? And so I think the role that the arts can play is it's a safe space to put things on stage as a mirror for people in the audience. So your kid may not be looking at something on stage thinking, I'm going to be an artist, but they see a role played on stage, a voice that reminds them of something they hear inside that hasn't been reflected to them yet. And they find a pathway to finding themselves. And I think that's the really special thing that the arts can do that grounds a kid when things are really challenging. because we all know the path that kids have now is a really challenging one with social media and all of the other things. So if a kid can find their voice, can find their footing, and the arts is a mirror for that, then I think that that's another miraculous thing. We see it with our camp programs. A kid will come in and they'll be like, why did my mom sign me up for musical theater? I don't even like to sing. And so it's our job to find, okay, you don't like to sing. There's like a million different things that you could do with the arts where you can find something that you're good at. And so we figure that out. We find that pathway, and a kid may learn, like, I'm really good with my hands. I actually am great at the set. I don't care about the arts at all, but I'm really good at project management. So I can help stage manage and make sure people are on stage when they need to be. So they discover things about themselves that I think are incredible. And those are things that they can carry with them for the rest of their lives, even if the arts don't kind of come into play for them. Our job is to represent life in different ways for people to look at and experience and critique. And, you don't often get safe spaces like that without the arts.
Wise words from Courtney Perkins, the executive director of the Prescott Park Arts Festival here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I'll be at the park this Wednesday to watch Brent Cobb perform, so if you're there and you see me, come up and say hi. I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for listening, and until next time, live free or die. Is that what we're going with for the close each week? All right, maybe we'll workshop it.